Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Light and Shadow podcast. I am a Gray, your spiritual mentor and guide, and today we are diving into something that will fundamentally change how you operate in the world: metacognition. Now, you might be thinking, meta what? Stay with me because this is one of the most powerful capabilities you have as a human being, and most people never learn to use it. Metacognition is simply this: thinking about your thinking. It's the ability to observe your own thought processes, to watch yourself think, to become aware of how your mind works. It's the difference between being lost in thought and watching yourself think. It's the difference between being controlled by your mind and consciously directing it. It's the difference between reacting unconsciously and responding consciously. Here's why this matters. Right now, most people are completely identified with their thoughts. When a thought appears in their mind, they believe it. They think it's truth. They think it's who they are. But metacognition creates distance. It allows you to observe. Oh, I'm having the thought that I am not good enough. Not I am not good enough, but I am having that thought. That distance, that space between you and your thoughts is where your power lives. It's where choice lives. It's where freedom lives. Today, we're going to explore what metacognition is, why it's essential for spiritual growth and manifestation, and how it relates to consciousness and the quantum field. And most importantly, how to develop it so you can consciously direct your mind instead of being controlled by it. This is advanced consciousness work. This is the key to breaking every limiting pattern you have. So let's dive in. Let me break down what metacognition actually is and why it's different from regular thinking. Regular thinking is you have thoughts and you're immersed in them. You believe them, react to them, identify with them. There's no separation between you and the thought. For example, I'm not good enough appears in your mind. And you feel terrible because you believe it's true about you. The metacognition is you observe yourself having thoughts. You're aware that you are thinking. There's a part of you that watches the thoughts arise and pass. For example, I notice I'm having the thought, I'm not good enough. Interesting. Where did that come from? Is it actually true? When you can observe your thoughts, several things become possible. You can question them. Instead of believing every thought that appears, you can ask, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Where did it come from? You can choose which thoughts to engage with. Not every thought deserves your attention. Metacognition allows you to decide which thoughts to follow and which to let pass. You can interrupt patterns. When you notice yourself spiraling into anxiety or falling into an old mental pattern, you can catch it and redirect it. You can consciously reprogram your mind. When you see the thoughts creating your reality, you can change them intentionally. You realize you are not your thoughts. This is the big one. When you can watch your thoughts, you realize there's a you separate from the thoughts. You are the awareness observing the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. In spiritual traditions, metacognition is called many things. In psychology, it's called the observer. In Buddhism, it's called mindfulness. The non-duality, it's called awareness of awareness. In Vedanta, it's called witness consciousness. All pointing to the same thing. The capacity to be aware that you are aware, to watch yourself think, to create space between consciousness and content. This is not just a mental trick. This is the foundation of awakening. Because when you realize you are not your thoughts, when you experience yourself as the awareness witnessing thoughts, you have touched something eternal, something that exists beyond the mind. So metacognition is not just useful for productivity or self-improvement. It's a doorway to understanding who you actually are beyond all the mental noise. Now let's connect this to consciousness and quantum physics. Because metacognition is not just a psychological skill. It is working directly with the nature of reality. Remember the observer effect from quantum physics. Consciousness collapses the wave function. Your observation determines what becomes real. But here's what most people miss. It's not just any consciousness that creates reality. It is consciousness. It is awareness that knows it's aware. When you're lost in unconscious thoughts, you're not truly observing. You are just reacting. You're on autopilot. Your subconscious beliefs are running the show, broadcasting to the quantum field, creating reality by default. But when you engage metacognition, when you consciously observe your thoughts, you become the active observer. You're no longer creating by default. You are creating by design. So, in quantum terms, unconscious thinking equals passive wave function. The infinite potential, but no direction. Metacognition equals active observation, which is the collapsing specific realities into form. When you think unconsciously, you are broadcasting whatever beliefs are running in the background. The quantum field responds, but you have no control over what you are creating. When you think metacognitively, you're consciously choosing which thoughts to amplify, which beliefs to hold, which frequency to broadcast. You become the deliberate observer, consciously collapsing the quantum field into desired realities, each and every time. Here's how it works. Thoughts create electromagnetic frequencies that broadcast to the quantum field. That field responds by organizing reality to match those frequencies. You experience the results of your unconscious thoughts as reality. Without metacognition, you don't see the connection between your thoughts and your reality. With metacognition, you observe. Oh, I have been thinking X, and now I am experiencing Y. They're connected. Metacognition reveals the feedback loop. It shows you how your thoughts are creating your experience, and once you see it, you can change it. Remember the double slit experiment? Remember the double slit experiment? When observed, particles behave like particles. When not observed, they behave like waves. Your thoughts work the same way. Without metacognition, the unconscious. Your thoughts exist as waves, vague, undefined, running on autopilot, creating reality randomly. With metacognition, the conscious observation, your thoughts become particles, specific, defined, intentional, creating reality deliberately. The act of observing your thoughts changes them. They go from unconscious patterns to conscious choice. Remember when we talked about God being within, around, and in between everything? About consciousness being the creative force in our previous episode? Metacognition is a practice of accessing that higher consciousness. It's the shift from thinking to awareness, from mind to consciousness, from a human to divine perspective. When you observe your thoughts, you're not observing from the human mind. You're observing from the level of pure consciousness. The same consciousness that underlies all of reality. This is why in meditation, the goal is not to stop thinking, but to observe thinking. Because in that observation, you realize you are not the thinker. You are the consciousness aware of the thinking. And that consciousness is the same consciousness that creates universes. So metacognition is not just self-awareness, it is God awareness. It is accessing the level of consciousness that creates reality and learning to direct it intentionally. Now let's get practical. What does metacognition actually show you when you start using it? Most people have no idea how much they are thinking or what they're thinking. The mind is just running in the background like a radio station you never turned on. Metacognition allows you to see. Repetitive thought loops. For example, I notice I think I am not good enough about 50 times a day. Metacognition allows you to see automatic negative biases. For example, I notice my mind immediately jumps to worst case scenarios. Allows you to see self-fulfilling prophecies. I notice, I tell myself, this won't work before I even try, and then it doesn't work, for example. Just seeing these patterns is powerful. It's called pattern recognition. Because once you see them, they lose some of their power over you. Metacognition reveals the ways your thinking is distorted. All or nothing thinking. For example, I notice I am thinking in extremes, total success or total failure, with no middle ground. Also catastrophizing. I notice I'm making the small problem into a disaster in my mind. Or mind reading. For example, I notice I'm assuming I know what they're thinking, with no actual evidence. Or personalization. For example, I notice I'm making everything about me when it's not. When you catch these distortions in real time through metacognition, you can correct them. For example, okay, that's catastrophizing. What's the actual reality here? This is where metacognition becomes truly transformative. You start seeing how your beliefs are literally creating your experiences. For example, you believe people cannot be trusted. Through metacognition, you notice, you think suspicious thoughts about people's motives. You interpret neutral actions as potential betrayal. You hold back from connecting deeply, or you create distance in relationships. Then people respond to your distance by pulling away. You then say, see, people cannot be trusted. Your belief created a self-fulfilling prophecy. Metacognition reveals the entire loop. Metacognition shows you the difference between what's actually happening and the story you're telling about what's happening. So what happened? Let's say your partner didn't text back for 2 hours. The story is, in your mind, they're losing interest. They don't care about me. This relationship is ending. So metacognition catches this. Wait, I'm telling myself a whole story based on a 2-hour delay. What is the actual fact here? They didn't text for 2 hours. That's it. Everything else is my story. When you can separate facts from stories, you stop living in unnecessary suffering created by your interpretation. Metacognition reveals where you resist reality. For example, I notice I keep trying to control the situation I cannot control. I notice I am arguing with what is instead of accepting it. I notice I am stuck because I'm resisting the discomfort of change. Awareness of resistance is the first step to releasing it. Most importantly, metacognition shows you your baseline frequency, the thoughts and emotions you default to when you're not consciously choosing. Is your default anxiety or peace? Scarcity or abundance? Criticism or compassion? Victimhood or empowerment? Your default state is what you are broadcasting to the quantum field most of the time. Metacognition lets you see it and change it. Okay, now let's talk about how to actually develop this skill. Because metacognition is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Just like going to the gym. So first practice is throughout your day, regularly pause and ask, what am I thinking right now? Not judging the thoughts, just noticing them, name them. For example, I am thinking about what I need to do later. Or I am replaying that conversation from this morning. Or I'm worrying about money. This simple practice creates distance. You're stepping into the observer position. Do this 10 times a day. Set reminders if you need to. Each time you do it, you are strengthening the metacognitive muscle. Another practice is when you notice a thought, label it. For example, planning thought, worry thought, judgment thought, memory thought, fantasy thought, yesterday thought. Labeling creates even more distance. It reminds you, this is just a thought, not reality, not me. Another practice, instead of I am anxious, say I notice I am experiencing anxiety. Instead of I am failing, say I notice I am having the thought that I am failing. The phrase, I notice, activates metacognition. It puts you in the observer role automatically. Another practice, meditation. Meditation is metacognition training. Sitting in stillness, watching thoughts arise and pass without engaging them. This is a pure metacognitive practice. You don't need hours, even 5 to 10 minutes a day of watching your thoughts without following them builds tremendous metacognitive capacity. Another practice, journaling your thoughts. Writing activates metacognition because you have to observe your thoughts to write them down. Try this. Set a timer for like 5 minutes and write. Right now, I am thinking. Just a stream of consciousness. Whatever thoughts are present, don't edit, don't judge. Just observe and record. This externalizes your thoughts, making them easier to observe objectively. Another practice is to question your thoughts. This is from Byron Katie's book, The Work. It's pure metacognition. When you have a stressful thought, ask, is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? How do I react when I believe that thought? How would I be without that thought? These questions force you into metacognitive observation. You can't answer them without stepping back from the thought and examining it. Another practice is to catch your patterns. Start noticing recurring thought patterns. For example, I notice every time someone gives me feedback, I immediately think I'm not good enough. Or I notice every time I try something new, I think this will not work. Or I notice every time I'm alone, I think something is wrong with me. So once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Oh, there's that pattern again. That's not true. It's just a habitual thoughts loop. You can have another practice is when you are stuck in a problem, ask, how am I thinking about this? Not what should I do, but how am I thinking? This immediately shifts you into metacognitive mode. You start examining the thought process itself, not just the content. Often the problem isn't the situation. It's how you're thinking about it. This question reveals that. Another practice is the mindful activities. Do routine activities with full awareness of your thoughts. I know it's difficult. Try it. When you're washing dishes, notice what your mind does. When you're walking, watch the thoughts that arise. When you're eating, observe the mental commentary. Any activity can become metacognition practice when you bring awareness to the thinking happening alongside it. And the last practice is before you go to sleep. Review your day. For example, what were my dominant thoughts today? Or what patterns did I notice? Or where was I conscious versus on autopilot? Or what thought created suffering today? Or what thought created peace? This builds metacognitive awareness retroactively and prepare you to be more conscious tomorrow. The key is consistency. Metacognition is a skill. Like any skill, it develops through practice. Start with one or two of these practices and build from there. Let me tell you what becomes possible when you develop strong metacognition. You stop being tyrannized by your thoughts. When a negative thought arises, you don't have to believe it, obey it, or be controlled by it. You can simply observe. Oh, here's that thought again. Interesting. Moving on. The thoughts still come, but they have no power over you because you know you are not the thoughts. You are the awareness watching them. You become a conscious creator instead of an unconscious reactor. You see the thoughts creating your reality, and you change them intentionally. You catch yourself broadcasting lack, and you shift to abundance. You catch yourself in victim mode, and you shift to empowerment. You catch yourself in fear, and you shift to trust. This is conscious manifestation. This is using your awareness to direct the quantum fields intentionally. Every limiting pattern you have exists because of unconscious thought loops running in the background. Metacognition brings them into the light, where they lose their power. Remember this. You cannot change what you cannot see. Metacognition makes the invisible visible, allowing you to reprogram at the root level. When you can observe your thoughts, you gain control over your emotional state. You realize that emotions are triggered by thoughts, not by circumstances. For example, I'm not upset because of what happened. I am upset because of what I am thinking about what happened. This realization gives you power. Change the thought, change the emotion. Ultimately, metacognition leads to awakening. Because the more you observe thoughts, the more you realize, I am not this. I am the awareness observing this. And that awareness, that consciousness, is infinite, eternal, connected to everything. It's the God consciousness we talked about earlier. Metacognition is the bridge from identifying as a limited human mind to realizing yourself as infinite consciousness. When you're not lost in thoughts, you're present, and presence is peace. Most suffering exists in thoughts. Worries about the future, regrets about the past, judgments about the present. When you can observe thoughts without being swept away by them, you access the peace that underlies all the mental noise. This is why I call metacognition a superpower. It's the skill that changes everything else. It is the foundation of consciousness, manifestation, healing, and awakening. Metacognition, thinking about your thinking, is not just a cognitive skill. It is the key to conscious living. It is the difference between being controlled by your mind and directing it. It is the difference between creating by default and creating by design. It is the difference between suffering unconsciously and choosing peace consciously. Most people live their life identified by their thoughts and with their thoughts, believing every story the mind tells, reacting to the internal commentary as if it's truth. But you have another option. You can become the observer. You can watch your thoughts arise and pass. You can question them, change them, or simply let them be without following them. In that space between you and your thoughts, that's where your power lives. That's where freedom lives. That's where consciousness lives. Start practicing, start noticing, start asking, what am I thinking right now? And as you develop this skill, you will find that you are not who you thought you were. You are not the anxious thoughts or the limiting beliefs or the mental chatter. You are the awareness witnessing it all. And that awareness, that consciousness is unlimited, creative, and connected to the divine intelligence that creates worlds. If you want support in developing metacognition and using it for conscious creation and spiritual growth, I'd be honored to guide you. You can find all my information about my mentorship and my academy in the link in my bio and in the description. Thank you for expanding your awareness with me today. Thank you for being willing to step back from your thoughts and observe them, because that simple shift changes everything. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness, aware of them. Now go observe, question, and create consciously.